for Carleton, Mississippi Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will speak to Bill 80, the Ontario Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Amendment Act 2015. The purpose of the Act, as stated in the Ontario Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act, the object of the Society, meaning the OSPCA, is to facilitate and provide for the prevention of cruelty to animals and for protection and relief therefrom. The OSPCA is a charitable organization that provides sheltering services for animals and has enforcement powers under the OSPCA Act. These powers include entering onto private property without a warrant, demanding the production of record and things, issuing orders, seizing animals, charging owners for the boarding, treatment, and care of seized animals, destroying animals, and laying charges for provincial offences or under the Criminal Code of Canada. The OSPCA and its affiliates have acquired these powers without being subject to any associated accountability or oversight. Given human nature, the combination of the lack of oversight and accountability of the OSPCA and the inherent conflict of interest of a private organization running both a private charity and a de facto private police force, it is not surprising that serious abuses of power and authority have developed at the OSPCA. The necessity to raise money to pay for enforcers' salaries has resulted in orders being written and animals being seized for the purpose of fundraising. So serious, in fact, are the reported abuses that Carl Noble, a former OSPCA director and a member of Inspection/Enforcement Committee and former mayor of South Bruce Peninsula, was one of the 29 directors who resigned en masse in 2006 in protest over the change in attitude of the OSPCA toward very aggressive enforcement. Carl and his 28 colleagues wrote letters to the Minister of Correctional Services expressing their strong concern over the aggressive actions of the OSPCA inspectors and calling for government to create oversight and accountability of OSPCA enforcement. Here is what he had to say in July 2008. The reason I resigned from the OSPCA board was because of deficit budgeting and the fact that they took a 180-degree turn in training and appointment of investigators. The newly appointed chief investigator was of the opinion that if you were charged by the OSPCA, you were guilty until proven innocent. This went directly against my grain. What really upset me was the fact that they suggested bulletproof vests, nightsticks, and handcuffs. And Carl said, I was of the opinion they should be taught some people's skills. Carl felt so strongly about this issue that he made a deputation to the Standing Committee on Bill 50. From Hansard, I quote, "We need accountability for and to the people of Ontario."
The Attorney General on a point of order. I would have to again say to the members, while the debate has been interesting this afternoon, we are debating Bill 80, but I do find that the member for Carleton, Mississippi Mills, is discussing, broadly speaking, the issues that are relevant with respect to Bill 80, and I would return to the member for Carleton, Mississippi Mills.
Mr. Speaker. It is about Bill 80. Some of this is history, but it's important history that is all of it pertains to the OSPCA Act and what I view as to be flaws in the Act that we should correct, and that correction should come from this House. So I would say that to the member across the way who has concerns, who's in a position to make those changes. The Lesage report following the decision of the OSPCA to kill 350 dogs in its Newmarket shelter, rather than treat the curable condition of ringworm, and its subsequent reversal of that decision after the OSPCA came under widespread public criticism, the provincial government asked Justice Patrick Lesage and Dr. Alan Meek to conduct an independent review of the OSPCA. The following recommendation was included in the Lesage report, and I quote, "The OSPCA Act gives the OSPCA powers akin to those of a police force, but does not identify an agency responsible for overseeing the OSPCA in its execution of the legislative mandate. The Ontario government should consider legislative amendments to provide for the oversight of the OSPCA in order to remedy the current situation of having the OSPCA essentially policing itself. Yet to date, nothing has been done." In Saskatchewan, the Saskatchewan provincial government withdrew all funding from the Saskatchewan Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals in the fall of 2014, which resulted in the Saskatchewan Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals being disbanded. The reason the Saskatchewan provincial government withdrew funding was the very aggressive abuse of enforcement powers to write unfounded orders and the wrongful seizure of horses from a farmer. The farmer has charged the Saskatchewan Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals with theft. The hurtful practice of abuse of power and authority by the Saskatchewan body had been going on for some time. Finally, an animal owner has stood up to them. Finally, they have been held to account. Finally, right has been done. In Grey Bruce, after numerous complaints of overreach and abuse on the part of the local OSPCA branch, particularly by an overly aggressive enforcement officer named Jennifer Bloom, the local OSPCA office in Hanover, which served the counties of Grey Bruce, was closed in 2013 and has not been reopened. The Lanark Animal Welfare Society. Other animal welfare organizations disapprove of the actions of the OSPCA. The Lanark Animal Welfare Society was an affiliate of the OSPCA. They sent a young woman named Melanie Young for OSPCA training to be an inspector. The Lanark Animal Welfare Society was very proud of Melanie because she had a strong sense of compassion for animals and also a healthy respect for the rights of people. The OSPCA failed Melanie as an inspector. They said she did not have an aggressive enough enforcement attitude. They said the Lanark Animal Welfare Society stood by Melanie and divorced themselves from the OSPCA and their aggressive ways. The Lanark Animal Welfare Society has been an independent, self-funding animal shelter since 1985. Police powers. All police forces in Canada have oversight and accountability mechanisms in place so that police officers can be held accountable for their actions. This is a necessary, understood, and accepted practice. Without the necessary oversight and accountability, the OSPCA has become an organization run amok. But instead of fixing the blatant problems that have become glaringly obvious to anyone paying attention, the provincial government is expanding the powers of the OSPCA with this bill. The case of Polyuk versus the government, identified by a legislative library researcher at the request of my office, clearly documents the inherent conflict of interest that is embedded in the governance model of the OSPCA. The conflict of interest inherent in the private funding/private policing model was one of the main issues facing Justice A. Zura of the Ontario Court of Justice in the case of the Crown versus Polyuk, decided in 2005. Polyuk involved the alleged mistreatment of 10 horses seized from her small farm by the Hamilton-Burlington Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. At trial, the defense argued that the Society's investigation was publicity-driven, financially motivated, and dependent on the evidence of witnesses with financial interests. Indeed, the evidence presented to the court revealed these points. The Society had issued flowery press releases while the horses were in its custody. These included appeals for money and stated that the Society would be required to pay for all the expenses arising from the seizure and ongoing care of the animals. The Society's inspector delayed laying charges for almost 6 months after the horses had been seized. Dr. Mogavero, the veterinarian who signed the certificate authorizing the Society to seize the horses, was also a member of the Society's board of directors. His duties as a board member included fundraising. Dr. Mogavero was on retainer with the Society in his capacity as a veterinarian. His usual practice was to give the Society a deep discount. In this case, however, he charged over $6,000 for his services, for which he was paid in full. In addressing the issue of the neutrality and fair-mindedness of the investigators, Judge Zura made the following observations about the Society's operations. It hires its own agents and inspectors, determines the parameters of their employment, and using aforementioned police powers, enters property, seizes animals, as in this case, without warrant or judicial intervention, and lays charges, all the while attending to its own need to fundraise. In order to do the latter, it relies heavily on the publicity it can glean from high-profile seizures and charges. Indeed, there is a communications branch tasked with this. It is a not-for-profit organization and a registered charity. Without publicity and high-profile charges, the funds of the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals that they need to operate would no doubt dry up. It goes without saying that a strong and active enforcement of animal cruelty laws must be maintained, but I would be naive to suggest that the current setup could not foster the perception in reasonable, open-minded people that bias may exist and that conflicts will result. However trite it may be, it is still true that justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be done. It is unfortunate, for example, that Dr. Mogavero, a highly qualified and well-respected professional, was placed in the position he was in this case. He directed the operation of the Society. He earned money from the Society. He helped fundraise for the Society. He was concerned for the budgetary needs of the Society. He took part in the investigation. He made the decisions to seize the horses. He made the decision to board and care for the horses and profited from doing so. Judge Zura concluded that the perception of bias arising from these facts was fatal to the prosecution's case and dismissed the charges against the farm owner, Mrs. Polyak, who suffered a great deal of worry, stress, and financial loss, not to mention her horses. Marineland is a responsible caretaker of their zoo. It is regularly inspected and it is good to their animals. Animal rights activists infiltrated the staff and made unfounded reports about Kiska, the orca whale. The banning of the possession of orca whales in the future is an unfounded attack on Marineland. By extension, this is an attack against all zoos across Ontario. Marineland is a significant employer in the Niagara area. Kiska is the main attraction. This bill is the result of the infiltration of Marineland and the OSPCA by animal rights extremists and will create unnecessary hardship for marine life. There are numerous other stories of abuse and maltreatment by the OSPCA, but I only have time to highlight 3 today to make the point that the OSPCA is out of control and needs to be reined in. John Nienhouse is a farmer. One summer, John Nienhouse of Sebringville, a hog farmer, had 5 pigs with belly button hernias, which is a common problem in pigs which were otherwise in excellent condition and safe to eat. He called Ontario Pork, his organization, to ask their advice on how to handle the hogs in the most humane way, and was advised to put the pigs on a separate small truck and take them to a local small slaughterhouse. He loaded them up and took them to slaughter for his own family's consumption. Upon arriving at the local slaughterhouse, the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and the Ontario Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs inspectors had a look at the pigs. The CFIA inspector viewed the pigs to be in good condition, but the OMAFRA inspector felt the pigs were suffering, so he killed the pigs on the spot with a hammer, then sent pictures of the bloody scene to the OSPCA and the OMAFRA veterinarian. The OSPCA charged Nienhouse with animal abuse. He went to court, he pleaded guilty, and he paid a $750 fine, and he paid his lawyer. John transported his pigs in a proper and humane way and is one of the best hog farmers in Ontario. His veterinarian said John runs a very well-managed farm and had done everything he should to be humane to the pigs. Gianna Tremonton, a teacher, lived in Etobicoke with her 16-year-old husky dog named Rocky. Rocky had a bed, food, and water in the backyard and had been treated for some 14 years for arthritis and various ailments by the same vet, Heather Hanna. One day, while Mrs. Tremonton was at work, the OSPCA seized her dog Rocky and left a notice on the door. Upon reading the note when she got home, Mrs. Tremonton phoned the OSPCA, who told her that Rocky was being treated, but that was not true. Without telling Mrs. Tremonton, Rocky had been euthanized the same day by the OSPCA. Sunny Reuter boarded her dog Arco in a kennel while she and her daughter went on vacation. Arco was a Turkish Akbash, a rare breed of dog that is fine-boned and slim-bodied. The OSPCA mistakenly thought Arco was a Great Pyrenees dog, a much heavier-bodied breed, assumed he was emaciated, and had him euthanized mere hours before Sunny returned home. Even though they had her phone number, the OSPCA did not bother to call Sunny's sister prior to killing the dog. Upon being informed of their mistake, the OSPCA responded and threatened Sunny with criminal charges. Only after Sunny was able to produce a veterinarian's report verifying Arco's good health prior to boarding him were the charges withdrawn. In conclusion, I would say I could go on for hours telling stories of the OSPCA misdeeds, so numerous are the accounts. The OSPCA cares not for the truth, nor for the people and the families that they terrorize. And yes, I mean terrorize. Often people decide to give up their livelihoods rather than fight the OSPCA and potentially lose everything. The people that do decide to fight, and even those that don't, often suffer severe consequences to their health and well-being. The examples I've shared with you today are not isolated incidents, but highlight a pattern of totalitarian behavior that has sadly become entrenched in the organization as the bullies never suffer consequences for their abusive behavior. When organizations are allowed to make up their own rules and are given expansive policing powers, it inevitably leads to abuse. This is not the only abusive organization empowered by this government, but it is one of the worst. Prior to giving the OSPCA further powers, the provincial government needs to clean up the mess it has created and restore sanity to the system, not reward the bullies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions and comments?